In Galatians 4 verse 8 to 11, Paul is actually talking a little bit about the faithfulness from the believer towards God. And he is addressing the people in Galatia, and he's actually saying to them that you did service to the false gods you served, but now you don't want to do any service. You don't want to show any faithfulness towards Christ and what He has done for you. Now let us read from Galatians 4 verse 8 unto 11. It says, Howbeit then, when you knew not God, you did service unto them, which by nature are no gods. But now after that you have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn you again to the weak and beggarly elements whereunto you desire again to be in bondage? You observe days and months and times and years. I am afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. Now, Paul comes in verse 8 and he says, when you were under false gods, you did service unto this God. There was a kind of a commitment that you have towards these gods. He says, but now after that you have known God, or rather are known of God. Now I've read some commentaries on that. What basically says is, that now that you have found God, he says, actually no, let me put it this way, now that you are found of God, don't make it your work again that you have now found God. It's actually that God has reached out to you and helped you. Don't think of it a work thing again. It's almost as if Paul uses words and he is now writing again, saying maybe they are just going to make a law out of this thing again and think that they have now found God through their own doings. And that would basically emphasize what these Jews are trying to tell them, that you must find God by your works. He says, no, God has found you. God has come and reached out to you. He has known you. Okay, he says, how do you turn again to the weak and beggarly elements whereunto you desire to be in bondage? We were saying when you were under the law system, or when you were serving the false gods rather, you did service. You stuck to what those gods said. You weren't changing. You stuck to them and you did service to them. He says, how are you now that you are under grace, going back to the old ways of doing, to laws and rules and regulations? Why are you going back to that? Those things couldn't help you, and Paul has established that. He says works and the powers of the human willpower to obey commandments could not save you, couldn't set you free. Now, why are you not basically doing service unto Jesus? And hereby he actually defines service unto Jesus as simply continuing to believe in Jesus and have the Holy Spirit lead your life and bring forth the fruit of the Spirit. Why do you want to now go back? You see, a true servant of the Lord, if you want to be a servant of the Lord, is somebody who allows God to serve Him with his life and then have the life and live the life whereby God has served you or which He has granted unto you. That is what it is all about. And then he goes on, he says, I'm concerned about you. He says, do you want to be in bondage again? So what he is saying is what we've said previously, and he repeats himself. He says, should you go back to this old system, you will be in bondage again. Bondage to what? Bondage to sin. Bondage to death. It would bring destruction to your life. Why do you want to go back to bondage? He says in verse 10 there, you observe days and months and times and years. I'm afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. So what he's doing is actually saying that you will be as bad off when you go back to this old system as what you would have been if I've never preached to you. That is what he's saying. So he's now coming and he is expressing his concern. And he's not saying this to just make them afraid. He's saying it because, according to Paul, it was the truth. Should you go back to, or should you go to Judaism? And what he's doing here is actually saying that Judaism under the law is as powerful unto salvation as what serving false gods would be. That's what he's basically saying. He says, howbeit then, verse 8, when you knew not God, you did service unto them, which by nature are no gods. But now, after that you have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn you again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto you desire to be in bondage again? So what he's saying is, now remember, they weren't caught in Judaism. They were serving false gods, things that were not God. Now, the whole thing is that they are being Judaized now. So he is saying, when you were serving no God, you were in bondage already. Now you want to go to Judaism. Do you want to be in bondage again? Actually saying that the bondage of paganism or being under pagan gods is equal to the bondage being in circumcision and referring to yourself according to the flesh. Because if you walk according to the flesh, you will be in bondage. As we've seen in our previous message, Romans 8 clearly states that those who walk according to the flesh, they are not the heirs. Those who walk according to the flesh, they are slaves. They are servants of sin. But those who walk according to the Spirit, and by the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, which in Romans 7 talks about what happens to you when you are under the law. When you end that system by believing in the Lord, then you are an heir. So he's coming and he's saying to these people, you are as bad off going into the law system as what you were when you were serving false gods. When you were, let's say they were worshiping Diana, where they had animal sacrifices of humans, worshiping the sex gods and all those kind of things. What Paul is coming, what he's saying here is, you are as dead in Judaism as what you are under pagan idol worship. Both of them are powerless unto salvation. And then he says, I am afraid of you. Paul is now expressing fear. He says, I've got fear in my heart that you guys are at a place where you will not experience the salvation power of God. He says, why am I afraid of you? Because you've started to observe days and months and times and years. So he's already saying, oh my goodness, these people are they're getting into something, and we're already seeing them following some of those customs. And I know in that way, there is no life. I already see the fruit of it in them now. And now I'm afraid that I have labored for you in vain. Can you see the heart of the apostle here? Can you see what a true father looks like? As someone who cares about his people, someone who really, really loves them, who feels that he has actually given birth to them, that he loves them, that he's there for them. He wants it to go well with them. And he does this from an understanding of the law, or the law system, or pagan worship is equally powerless unto salvation. Therefore, he doesn't want them to go into that. And he's willing to express that. He's willing to suffer. He's willing to be persecuted for what he is saying. But he wants these people to have life. He's not writing from the perspective, you Galatians, I've labored in vain, well, get lost then. No, he's not writing like that. He's writing from a heart of care. And he's expressing his true concern, and that is that they will not experience what it means to be an heir, and that they will not inherit what God has given for them should they go back to another system.